Billionaire doctor says to the friendly janitor, "Let's have dinner. No excuses. I've waited 10 years. The August heat pressed against the windows of Celeste Davenport's corner office like an unwelcome memory. Through the glass she could see the entire sprawl of the Melbrook Hotel, 23 floors of chrome and ambition, a monument to her father's vision and her unexpected inheritance. At 25, she was the youngest billionaire hotel owner on the eastern seaboard, a distinction that felt more like a prison sentence than an achievement. She pressed her fingers against her temples, trying to ease the headache that had become her constant companion since returning from Johns Hopkins 6 months ago. Medical school had been her escape, her rebellion against the destiny her father had planned. But then he died, suddenly and completely, leaving her with an empire she never wanted and a loneliness that echoed through every marble corridor. The knock on her door was soft, almost apologetic. "Come in," she called, not looking up from the financial reports that blurred together on her desk. The door opened, and she heard the distinctive squeak of rubber-soled work boots on polished floor. She knew that sound. She'd been listening for it, unconsciously, for 6 months. "Dr. Davenport." The voice was deeper than she remembered, roughened by years and whatever life had thrown at him. "The air conditioning unit in the East Wing is fixed. Should run smooth now." Celeste looked up, and her breath caught the way it always did when she saw him. Ryan Walker stood in her doorway, 28 years old and somehow more beautiful than the 18-year-old boy she'd fallen in love with a decade ago. His blue maintenance uniform was clean but worn, the yellow gloves tucked into his belt. His dark hair was longer now, touching his collar, and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there that summer when the world was young and everything seemed possible. "Thank you, Ryan," she managed, her voice steadier than her heartbeat. "I appreciate your quick work." He nodded, professional and distant, the way he'd been since she'd returned and discovered him working in her hotel. The polite, stranger routine they'd perfected over these months was exhausting. "Is there anything else you need?" he asked, already half-turned to leave. "Actually," Celeste heard herself say, the words coming from somewhere brave and reckless. "Yes, there is." Ryan paused, his hand on the doorframe. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful control he maintained whenever they were in the same room. "Dinner," she said, standing up, her royal blue blazer perfectly pressed, her denim shorts a concession to the heat, and her own refusal to become her father. "Tonight, you and me. No excuses." His eyes met hers for the first time in weeks, those green eyes that had haunted her dreams through medical school, through every meaningless date, through every achievement that felt hollow without him to share it. "Dr. Davenport." "I waited 10 years, Ryan," she interrupted, her voice cracking slightly. 10 years wondering what happened to you, where you went, why you disappeared that night without saying goodbye. And now you're here, working in my hotel, fixing my air conditioning, calling me Dr. Davenport like we're strangers, like that summer never happened." The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they'd never said. "That summer," Ryan said quietly, "was a long time ago. You were 15. I was 18. You were Richard Davenport's daughter, and I was the kid who worked on motorcycles in my uncle's garage down the street." "I'm not 15 anymore," Celeste said, walking around her desk. "And you're not just some kid. You're—" She stopped, searching for words that wouldn't sound desperate. "You're the only person who ever saw me, really saw me. Before the medical degree, before the inheritance, before all of this." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Things are different now." "Are they?" Celeste challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, nothing's changed. You're still running, I'm still chasing, and we're both still pretending that summer didn't mean what we both know it meant. What do you want from me, Celeste?" The use of her first name was like a physical touch, unexpected and electric. "Dinner," she repeated. 7 o'clock, Tony's on the waterfront. "And honest answers to questions I've been carrying for a decade." Ryan looked at her for a long moment, and she could see the war happening behind his eyes. Finally, he nodded once, sharp and decisive. 7 o'clock, he confirmed. "But after tonight, this stops. Whatever closure you need, whatever questions you have, we settle it, and then we go back to being what we are now. Boss and employee, nothing more." "Fine," Celeste agreed, even though the words hurt. Closure. He left without another word, and she sank back into her chair, her hands shaking. What was she doing? What did she hope to accomplish? The rational part of her brain, the part that had gotten her through organic chemistry and clinical rotations, told her this was insane. But the part of her that still remembered the taste of salt air and the feel of motorcycle leather, and the sound of Ryan's laugh when she'd told him her dreams of becoming a doctor, that part didn't care about rational. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions she made on autopilot. Her assistant, Margaret, noticed her distraction, but was too professional to comment. At 6:30, Celeste left the office, ignoring the curious looks from her staff. She changed in her penthouse suite, the one that had been her father's now hers, trading her blazer for a simple white linen dress that she hoped said casual and not trying too hard. Tony's Waterfront was a small Italian restaurant tucked between a marina and a bookstore, the kind of place where locals went and tourists missed. Celeste arrived 10 minutes early, too nervous to be fashionably late. The hostess recognized her. Everyone in this town recognized her, but had the grace not to make a fuss. "Table for two," Celeste said. "Under Davenport." "Of course, Dr. Davenport, right this way." The table overlooked the water, where sailboats rocked gently in their slips and the sunset painted everything gold and orange. Celeste ordered a glass of wine she didn't drink and watched the door. Ryan arrived exactly at 7, and Celeste's breath caught again at the sight of him. He'd changed too. Dark jeans, a simple gray t-shirt that showed off shoulders that had gotten broader with years of physical work. His hair was still damp, like he'd just showered. He looked uncomfortable and beautiful, and so much like the boy she'd loved that it physically hurt. "Hi," she said as he slid into the chair across from her. "Hi," he replied. And for a moment they were 18 and 15 again, sitting on the beach after midnight, talking about everything and nothing while the world slept around them. The waitress came and Ryan ordered coffee. He'd never been much of a drinker. They made small talk about the menu, the weather, anything but what they were really there to discuss. Finally, after they'd ordered and the initial awkwardness had settled into something almost bearable, Celeste put her hands flat on the table and looked him in the eye. "Why did you leave?" she asked. "That night we had plans. You were going to meet me at the pier at midnight. I waited for 3 hours, Ryan, and then you were just gone. Your uncle said you'd left town, wouldn't tell me where. I tried to find you." "I know," Ryan interrupted. "I know you tried. Then why? If you knew I was looking, why didn't you?" "Your father came to see me," Ryan said, the words dropping like stones into still water. "The day before I was supposed to meet you. He knew about us, about our plans." Celeste felt the blood drain from her face. "What?" "He came to the garage where I worked," Ryan continued, his voice careful and controlled. "Said he knew his daughter fancied herself in love with the mechanic's nephew. Said he understood. I was probably the first boy who'd paid attention to you, and you were at that age where rebellion looked like romance." "That's not—" Celeste started, but Ryan held up a hand. "Let me finish," he said, "please. I've been carrying this for 10 years. Let me say it." She nodded, her throat tight. "He made me an offer," Ryan said. $20,000. Enough to get out of my uncle's house, to start fresh somewhere else, maybe go to community college like I'd been dreaming about. All I had to do was disappear. Leave town that night. No goodbyes. No contact. He said it was for your own good, that you had potential, that you were destined for medical school and a brilliant career, and I would only hold you back. The restaurant sounds, clinking glasses, low conversation, the clink of silverware, all faded into white noise. Celeste could only stare at Ryan, trying to process what he was saying. "I told him no," Ryan continued. "Told him what we had was real, that age didn't matter, that I would wait for you, work for you, be whatever you needed." And he laughed. He actually laughed and said, "Son, you have no idea what you're turning down. That girl upstairs in her pink bedroom, reading her medical textbooks and dreaming of Hopkins. She's going to be someone, and you're going to be a mechanic in a small town, just like your uncle, just like your father before you ran off. Do you really want to be the reason she gives all that up?" Celeste's eyes were burning. "Ryan." "He was right," Ryan said flatly. "You did go to Hopkins, you did become someone. Look at you now. Dr. Celeste Davenport, youngest billionaire hotel owner on the East Coast. Everything your father said you'd be." "I became that because I lost you," Celeste said, her voice breaking. "I became that because I threw myself into school and work and anything that would stop me from thinking about the boy who left me waiting on a pier at midnight. That wasn't destiny, Ryan. That was survival." Ryan's hands clenched on the table. "I took his money," he admitted. "Took the 20,000 and left town that night. Told myself I was doing the noble thing, setting you free to become everything you were meant to be. I went to community college in North Carolina, got my associate's degree in mechanical engineering, worked in a factory for 5 years, saved every penny. And I told myself it was worth it because somewhere you were saving lives and making your dreams come true. And then?" Celeste asked, needing to know all of it. "And then my uncle got sick," Ryan said. "Called me 2 years ago, said he needed help. So I came back. Started working odd jobs, whatever I could find. When the Melbrock needed maintenance staff, I applied. I knew you'd inherited it, knew there was a chance I'd see you. Part of me hoped you'd stayed in Baltimore, that you'd married some doctor and moved on. But part of me, he trailed off. Part of you, what? Celeste pressed. Ryan met her eyes, and in them she saw the same boy who'd taught her to ride on the back of his motorcycle, who'd listened to her talk about cellular biology like it was poetry, who'd kissed her in the rain and promised her forever. Part of me hoped you'd come back, he said quietly, so I could see if you were as happy as I'd convinced myself you would be. And? Celeste asked. Am I? Happy? Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, took in the designer dress and the perfect hair, and the exhaustion that lived in her eyes despite the smiles she manufactured for hotel investors and medical colleagues. No, he said. You're not. Neither am I. So maybe your father's money bought us exactly nothing but 10 years of misery apart instead of together. The truth of it hung between them, raw and painful. Their food arrived, and they picked at it without much appetite. But slowly, carefully, they began to talk. Real talk, not the careful pleasantries they'd exchanged in hotel hallways. Ryan told her about North Carolina, about the factory work that had been mind-numbing but profitable, about the community college classes where he'd been older than most of his classmates, about coming back to find his uncle dying of cancer, about the promise he'd made to take care of the old man's affairs. Celeste told him about Hopkins, about the brutal hours and the constant pressure, about being Richard Davenport's daughter in a world that expected her to fail, about her father's sudden death from a heart attack, about inheriting an empire she'd never wanted, about the loneliness of living in his penthouse and running his hotel and trying to be half the person he'd been. What was your first love still remember? Do you remember? Celeste said as they shared a piece of tiramisu neither of them had ordered but the waitress had brought anyway. That night at the lighthouse? Ryan smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him all evening. When you decided you were going to climb to the top even though you're terrified of heights? I wasn't terrified, Celeste protested. I was. Cautious. You white-knuckled the railing the entire way up, Ryan said, laughing now. And then when we got to the top, you were shaking so hard I had to hold you. You didn't have to, Celeste said softly. You wanted to. The laughter faded, replaced by something heavier and more honest. Yeah, Ryan admitted. I wanted to. I always wanted to. Then why are we doing this? Celeste asked. Why are we pretending that 10 years changed what we both know never changed? Ryan's smile faded. Because 10 years did change things, Celeste. You're not the 15-year-old girl dreaming of medical school anymore. And I'm not the 18-year-old kid who thought love could overcome everything. We're different people now. Are we? Celeste challenged. Because I still dream about that summer. I still remember exactly how it felt when you taught me to ride on the back of your motorcycle. She stopped, choking on the words. I still love you, Ryan. I think I never stopped. The confession hung in the air between them, impossible and true. Ryan closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. Don't, he said. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Harder than what? Celeste demanded. Harder than spending every day working in the same building, pretending we don't have a history. Harder than lying awake at night wondering what might have been if my father hadn't. She stopped, anger flooding through her. He had no right, Ryan. No right to decide our future for us. Maybe not, Ryan agreed, but he did. And we can't go back and change it. All we can do is figure out how to move forward. Together, Celeste said. We move forward together. Ryan shook his head. You're my boss, Celeste. You own the hotel where I work. There's a power dynamic there that we can navigate, Celeste interrupted. Ryan, I don't care about the optics or the complications or what people will say. I spent 10 years caring about what people thought, about being perfect, about living up to my father's expectations. I'm done. She reached across the table and took his hand. I want this us, whatever that looks like. Us. Ryan's fingers closed around hers and she felt the calluses from his work, the strength in his grip. What if we can't make it work? He asked. What if we try and fail, and you end up resenting me, or I end up resenting you, or what if we don't try? Celeste countered. And spend the rest of our lives wondering. I can't do that again, Ryan. I can't lose you twice. The restaurant was emptying around them. The sun had set completely, leaving the marina in darkness punctuated by dock lights. Their waitress had given up on subtle hints, and was now openly waiting for them to leave. I need time, Ryan said finally, to think about this, about what it would mean. Celeste wanted to argue, wanted to demand an answer now, tonight, before the courage that had brought her here faded. But she could see the genuine confusion in his eyes, the war between what he wanted and what he thought was right. Okay, she agreed, releasing his hand even though it hurt to let go. Take your time. Think about it. But Ryan, she waited until he looked at her. Don't take another 10 years, please. He nodded, standing up. I'll walk you to your car. They walked in silence through the quiet streets, past shops closing for the night, and restaurants winding down. Celeste had parked in the hotel garage, one of the perks of owning the building. As they approached her silver Mercedes, Ryan stopped. I have something, he said. Something I should have given you a long time ago. From his pocket, he pulled a small object wrapped in a clean shop rag. He handed it to Celeste, and she unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a bracelet, simple silver chain with a single charm, a tiny motorcycle. You made this, Celeste breathed, remembering. That summer, you made it in your uncle's workshop. I was going to give it to you that night, Ryan said. At the pier. I carried it in my pocket for 3 years before I could bring myself to put it away. And then when I came back here, when I knew I'd be working at your hotel, I don't know, I started carrying it again, like a reminder of what I'd lost, or maybe what I'd thrown away. Celeste's hands were shaking as she fastened the bracelet around her wrist. Help me, she said, holding out the clasp. Ryan's fingers brushed her skin as he secured it, and the touch sent shivers up her arm. When it was fastened, neither of them moved. They stood in the dim garage light, too close and not close enough. Celeste, Ryan said, his voice rough. Whatever he was going to say was interrupted by the roar of an engine. Both of them turned to see a familiar blue Harley-Davidson rolling down the ramp into the garage. But it wasn't Ryan driving it. It was an older man Celeste recognized as Tom, one of the hotel's security guards. Sorry to interrupt, Tom called, killing the engine. Found this beauty parked in the loading zone. Was about to have it towed until I saw the registration. Belongs to you, Ryan? Ryan's face had gone white. Where exactly did you find it? He asked, his voice tight. Loading dock, east side. Been there a few hours at least. That's impossible, Ryan said. I parked it at my apartment this morning. Haven't touched it since. Celeste felt a chill run down her spine. Someone moved it? She asked. Tom shrugged. Must have. Got the keys and everything still in it. Weird, right? Anyway, figured you'd want it back before some punk decided to take it for a joyride. Ryan walked over to the motorcycle, running his hands over it like he was checking for damage. Celeste followed, and as she got closer, she noticed something that made her stop cold. Attached to the handlebar, secured with a twist of wire, was a photograph. Old, faded, the edges worn soft. Ryan picked it up, and Celeste looked over his shoulder. The photograph showed 2 men, both in their 30s, standing in front of the Melbrook Hotel. They had their arms around each other's shoulders, both grinning at the camera. One of them Celeste recognized immediately. Her father, Richard Davenport, 20 years younger but unmistakable. The other man looked strikingly like Ryan. Same green eyes, same strong jaw. Who is that? Celeste asked, though something in her gut already knew the answer. My father, Ryan said, his voice barely audible. But that's impossible. He left when I was a baby. My uncle said he just took off one day, never looked back. I've never seen a picture of him with anyone from this town, let alone with my father, Celeste finished. She turned the photograph over. On the back, in handwriting she didn't recognize, were 4 words. Best friends. Summer 1985. Ryan and Celeste looked at each other, the same realization dawning on both of them simultaneously. My father knew your father, Celeste said slowly. They were friends. More than that, Ryan said, pointing to something else in the photograph. Parked behind the 2 men, gleaming and new, was the blue Harley-Davidson they were currently standing next to. This bike was theirs. Both of them. The implications were staggering. Richard Davenport and Ryan's father, best friends. The motorcycle that Ryan had spent years restoring, that he'd told Celeste had been his uncle's. It had belonged to both their fathers, which meant when her father had come to Ryan 10 years ago and paid him to leave town, he hadn't just been protecting his daughter's future, he'd been protecting something else. Some secret from his past that involved Ryan's father. I need to find my uncle, Ryan said, his voice shaking with something between anger and confusion. He's been in hospice care, but he's still lucid most days. He'll know. He has to know what this means. I'm coming with you, Celeste said immediately. Celeste, no arguments, she said firmly. Whatever this is, it involves both of us. Both our fathers. I deserve to know the truth as much as you do. Ryan looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, he said. Okay, but not tonight. Uncle James needs his rest and I need to figure out what to even ask him. Tomorrow. I'll pick you up at noon and we'll go together. Tomorrow, Celeste agreed. She looked at the photograph again, at the two young men frozen in a moment of friendship, standing in front of the hotel she now owned. Ryan, do you think, is it possible that my father didn't just know your father, that there's more to the story? I think, Ryan said carefully, that there's a lot more to the story than either of us ever knew, and I think someone wanted us to find this photograph tonight. Who? Celeste asked, looking around the garage as if expecting to see someone watching them. I don't know, Ryan admitted, but whoever it was, they went to a lot of trouble to move my bike here and make sure we'd see this. Tom, who'd been waiting patiently by his golf cart, cleared his throat. You folks all set? I got rounds to make. Yeah, Tom, Ryan said. Thanks for bringing it down, I appreciate it. After Tom left, Ryan carefully pocketed the photograph. I should go, he said. Get home. Try to make sense of all this. Ryan, Celeste said, catching his arm as he turned toward the motorcycle. Thank you, for tonight, for telling me the truth about what happened 10 years ago, she touched the bracelet on her wrist. For this. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. In the harsh garage lighting, she could see every line, every shadow, every year that had passed between them, but she could also see the boy she'd loved, still there in his eyes. I never stopped thinking about you, he said quietly. Not once in 10 years. I tried, God knows I tried. Dated other women, told myself I'd moved on. But none of them were you. None of them even came close. Celeste's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. So what does that mean? For us? Ryan reached up and touched her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. I don't know yet, he admitted, but I'm starting to think that maybe we were never supposed to move on. Maybe we were always supposed to find our way back to each other, even if it took 10 years and a mysterious photograph and, he laughed, a sound without much humor, and whatever the hell our fathers were keeping from us. Hello, my friend. How was your day today? Is everything okay? The voice came from behind them, making both Ryan and Celeste jump. They turned to find an elderly woman emerging from the shadows near the garage elevator. She was small and bent, with white hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing a pink cardigan despite the heat. Celeste recognized her as Mrs. Chen, who lived in one of the hotel's long-term residence suites on the 3rd floor. Mrs. Chen, Celeste said, her hand pressed to her chest. You startled us. Are you all right? Do you need help getting to your room? The old woman smiled, but there was something knowing in her eyes that made Celeste uncomfortable. I'm fine, dear. Just taking my evening constitutional. Doctor says I need to walk every day, keep the blood moving. She looked between Ryan and Celeste, then at the motorcycle. Beautiful bike. Reminds me of one I used to see parked here, 40 years ago. Back when I was a young woman working in the hotel restaurant. Celeste and Ryan exchanged glances. 40 years ago? Ryan asked. You worked here that long? Longer, Mrs. Chen said. Started when I was 18, fresh off the boat from Taiwan. Your father gave me my first job in America, Dr. Davenport. Kind man, your father. Complicated, but kind. Did you... Celeste's mouth was dry. Did you know Ryan's father? James Walker? Mrs. Chen's smile widened. Jamie Walker? Oh yes, everyone knew Jamie. He and your father, they were thick as thieves back in the day. Along with your Uncle James. She nodded to Ryan. The three of them, always together. Until... She stopped, her smile fading. Well, until they weren't. What happened? Ryan asked urgently. What happened between them? Mrs. Chen looked at him with something like pity. That's not my story to tell, young man. But I will say this. Whatever your fathers did, they did it because they thought they were protecting the people they loved. Whether they were right or wrong, I can't say, but their intentions were good. Mrs. Chen? Celeste said, stepping forward. Please, if you know something about our fathers, about why Jamie Walker left town, about any of it, we need to know. It's important. The old woman studied them both for a long moment. Then she reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a small key on a tarnished chain. Room 447, she said, handing the key to Celeste. 4th floor, east wing. Been locked since your father died, Dr. Davenport. No one's been in there in 6 months. But maybe, she looked at Ryan, maybe it's time someone did. What's in room 447? Celeste asked, the key heavy in her palm. Answers, Mrs. Chen said simply. Or at least the beginning of them. Your father kept an office there. Private. Not the big fancy one everyone knew about. This was where he went when he needed to think, to remember, to, I suspect, regret. Why are you telling us this now? Ryan asked. Mrs. Chen's eyes were sharp despite her age. Because I'm 87 years old, and I don't have time to watch two young people make the same mistakes their fathers did. Because I liked Jamie Walker, and he deserved better than what life gave him. And because, she looked directly at Celeste, because your father in his own complicated way loved you more than anything in this world, even when his choices didn't show it. With that cryptic statement, Mrs. Chen shuffled toward the elevator, leaving Ryan and Celeste standing in the garage, the key gleaming in Celeste's hand. Do we go now? Ryan asked. To room 447? Celeste looked at her watch. It was past 10 o'clock. The fourth floor east wing has been closed for renovations for months, she said. No one will be there, no one will see us. Then let's go, Ryan said, before I lose my nerve. They took the service elevator, which opened directly onto the fourth floor, without passing through the lobby. The east wing was indeed under renovation. Drop cloths covered the carpet and the smell of fresh paint lingered in the air. But room 447's door looked untouched, the brass number plate polished and gleaming. Celeste fitted the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, like it had been recently oiled. The door swung open on silent hinges, and they stepped into darkness. Ryan found a light switch and fluorescent panels flickered to life, revealing a small office that looked frozen in time. Unlike the rest of the hotel's sleek modern aesthetic, this room was purely functional. A metal desk, 2 filing cabinets, a corkboard covered in photographs and newspaper clippings, and along one wall, a workbench scattered with tools and motorcycle parts. Jesus, Ryan breathed, walking toward the workbench. This is a restoration station. Top-of-the-line equipment, some of this stuff. You could rebuild an entire bike in here. But Celeste was drawn to the corkboard. The photographs pinned there told a story. Her father and 2 other young men, all in their 20s, all grinning at the camera in various locations around what Celeste recognized as a younger version of the Mel Brock Hotel. Construction sites, grand openings, Christmas parties. And in every single photograph, somewhere in the background or foreground was the blue Harley Davidson. They shared it, Celeste said, understanding dawning. The 3 of them. The motorcycle was theirs together. Some kind of symbol or pact or... Look at this, Ryan called from the desk. He'd opened one of the filing cabinets and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, legal papers, bank statements, and a letter written in her father's handwriting. Ryan read it aloud, his voice shaking. To whoever finds this, if you're reading this, I'm likely dead, and the secrets I've kept have probably already caused more harm than good. I won't make excuses for the choices I made, but I will at least explain them. James Walker was my best friend. His brother James, we called him Jimmy to avoid confusion, was like a brother to me. The 3 of us built the Mel Brock together, though only my name ended up on the deed. That was the plan from the start. Jamie and Jimmy came from nothing, and I had family money. I was the face, they were the muscle and the brains. The Harley was our symbol. We each owned a third of it, though we joked that Jamie loved it most. For 10 years we were unstoppable. The hotel thrived. We were young, successful, invincible. And then Jamie fell in love. Her name was Margaret Song. She worked in our restaurant. Beautiful, kind, smart. Jamie loved her desperately, completely, and she loved him back. They were going to get married. But Margaret was also the woman I loved, had loved for years, secretly, hopelessly. I never told Jamie, never admitted it. Because he was my friend and he was happy, and what kind of man betrays his best friend? So instead I did something worse. I sabotaged them. Small things at first. Lost reservations for their dates, a rumor here, a doubt planted there. I told myself I was protecting him, that Margaret wasn't good enough, that she would hurt him, but the truth was simpler and uglier. I wanted her for myself, and I couldn't stand watching them together. Jimmy figured it out, confronted me. We fought, really fought, broke furniture and bruised ribs and said things we couldn't take back. He told Jamie everything. Jamie left that night, took his third of the Harley and disappeared. We never saw him again. Margaret was heartbroken. She quit the restaurant, left town. I lost them both, Jamie to the road, Margaret to grief, and Jimmy to disgust at what I'd done. For 40 years I've lived with that choice, built an empire, married a woman I didn't love, had a daughter I adored but couldn't figure out how to talk to. Because how do you teach someone about honesty when you've built your life on betrayal? When Jamie's son showed up 15 years ago, working at his uncle's garage, I saw my chance at redemption. I could help him, make sure he didn't make the same mistakes. I could guide him, protect him, be the mentor his father should have been. And then he fell in love with my daughter. History repeating, just with the names rearranged. I panicked, paid him to leave, told myself it was for Celeste's future, for her dreams of medical school. But the truth? I couldn't bear to watch it happen again. Couldn't bear to see young love destroyed the way I'd destroyed Jamie and Margaret's. So I destroyed it myself, quicker and cleaner. Made it look like I was being a protective father instead of a coward reliving his worst mistake. The Harley is in the garage, hidden under a tarp in the storage area. I never could bring myself to sell it or throw it away. It's all 3 pieces now. I bought back the parts Jamie took when he left. Spent a fortune tracking them down. It's complete again, waiting for someone who can make it whole in a way the 3 of us never could. If Ryan Walker is reading this, know that your father was a better man than I ever was. If Celeste is reading this, know that I loved you more than I had the words to say even when I failed you. And if you're reading this together, well, maybe there's hope for this story after all. Richard Davenport. The silence after Ryan finished reading was absolute. Celeste felt like she'd been punched in the chest, like all the air had been sucked out of the room. She looked at Ryan and saw her own shock mirrored in his face. He knew, she whispered. He knew our father's history and he still paid me to leave, Ryan finished, because he was trying to protect us from becoming our fathers, from making the same mistakes. But we're not them, Celeste said fiercely. We're not, Ryan, we're not going to betray each other. We're not going to sabotage what we have because of fear or pride or, aren't we? Ryan asked and his voice was raw. Celeste, I took your father's money. I left you waiting on that pier. I made the exact same choice he did. I chose to run instead of fight. I let fear dictate my actions. How is that any different? You were 18, Celeste said. You were being manipulated by a man who knew exactly what buttons to push. That's not the same as, isn't it? Ryan interrupted. I've spent 10 years telling myself I did the noble thing, that I set you free to become everything you were meant to be. But the truth is, I took the easy way out. Your father offered me a reason to run and I grabbed it with both hands. Because being with you meant facing your world, facing the whispers and the judgment and the reality that I was a mechanic's nephew dating a billionaire's daughter, and I wasn't brave enough. And now? Celeste asked, her voice barely audible. Are you brave enough now? Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, and she could see the war happening behind his eyes. The boy who'd loved her and the man who'd learned to protect himself. The dreamer and the realist. The hopeful and the heartbroken. I don't know, he admitted. But I want to be, God, Celeste, I want to be. I want. Celeste crossed the room and took his hands, the letter still clutched between them. Then let's be brave together, she said. Let's not make our father's mistakes. Let's not let fear win again. What if we fail? Ryan asked. What if we try this and it doesn't work and we end up hurting each other worse than before? What if we don't try? Celeste countered. And spend the rest of our lives wondering. Ryan, I've spent 10 years in that space. 10 years of what-ifs and maybes and if-onlys. I can't do it again. I won't. Ryan's hands tightened on hers. Your father was right about one thing, he said quietly. You were destined for greatness. You are great. Dr. Celeste Davenport, brilliant surgeon, successful business owner. What am I? A janitor with a 2-year degree and a motorcycle I can barely afford to maintain. You're the man who taught me to be brave, Celeste said fiercely. The man who listened to a 15-year-old girl talk about cellular biology like it mattered. The man who made me feel seen and valued and important for who I was, not what I could become. You're the man who carried a bracelet in his pocket for 3 years because you couldn't let go of what we had. That's not nothing, Ryan. That's everything. Celeste, I don't care about the optics, she continued, not letting him interrupt. I don't care that you work for me or that there's a salary difference or that people will talk. Let them talk. Let them whisper and speculate and judge. I spent too much of my life caring what people thought. I'm done. I want, her voice broke. I want you. I want us. I want the life we should have had 10 years ago. Ryan pulled her close and she went willingly, pressing her face against his chest and breathing in the scent of him. Soap and coffee, and something uniquely Ryan that she'd never forgotten. His arms came around her, strong and sure, and for the first time in a decade, Celeste felt like she'd come home. Okay, he said into her hair. Okay, let's try. Let's be brave and stupid and hopeful and see what happens. Celeste pulled back enough to look up at him, tears streaming down her face. Really? She asked. You mean it? Really, Ryan confirmed. I mean it. No more running. No more letting fear make our choices. We try this together and whatever happens, happens. Celeste laughed, the sound somewhere between joy and relief. That's possibly the least romantic declaration I've ever heard. Ryan smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look young again. Yeah, well, I'm a janitor, not a poet. You want romantic speeches? You should have fallen in love with someone else. Too late, Celeste said, reaching up to touch his face. I fell in love with you 10 years ago and I never figured out how to fall out. Good, Ryan said, and then he kissed her. It was nothing like their first kiss, that fumbling teenage moment on the beach 10 years ago. This was better, deeper, more certain, weighted with years of longing and loss and the fierce joy of finding your way back to something you thought was gone forever. Celeste melted into it, into him, her hands fisting in his shirt to pull him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. So what now? He asked. What's the plan? Now, Celeste said. We figure it out. Together. We talk to your uncle. Find out what else he knows about our fathers. We decide what to do about us. Whether you keep working at the hotel or find something else. Whether we're public about this or keep it quiet until we're sure. We take it slow. Take it carefully, but we take it together. I like the sound of that, Ryan said. Together. They stayed in room 447 for another hour, going through the rest of the files, piecing together the story of their father's friendship and betrayal. They found photographs of Margaret Song, beautiful and smiling, unaware of the drama she'd sparked. They found bank statements showing the money Richard Davenport had paid to track down the missing Harley parts. They found in a small wooden box at the back of the filing cabinet 3 friendship bracelets, handmade, worn soft with age, each with 3 names braided together, Richard, Jamie, and Jimmy. They were brothers, Celeste said, holding one of the bracelets. Not by blood, but by choice. And my father destroyed that because he couldn't control his feelings. Maybe, Ryan said. Or maybe it was just bad luck and bad timing and human weakness. People make mistakes, Celeste. Even good people. Even people who love each other. Is that what we're doing? Celeste asked, making a mistake? Yeah. Ryan took the bracelet from her hand and set it carefully back in the box. No, he said firmly. What we're doing is refusing to repeat one. There's a difference. They locked room 447 behind them, but Celeste kept the key. It felt important somehow, like a tangible piece of the truth they'd uncovered. They rode the elevator down together, hands intertwined, not talking but not needing to. In the garage, Ryan's Harley was waiting, blue and beautiful in the fluorescent light. He ran his hand over the seat, then turned to Celeste with a question in his eyes. Want a ride? He asked. For old time's sake? Celeste looked at the motorcycle, remembering the 15-year-old girl who'd been so terrified and exhilarated the first time Ryan had taken her out on it, remembering the feel of the wind in her hair and her arms around his waist, and the sense that anything was possible. Yes, she said. Definitely yes. Ryan pulled out his phone. Let me just text my neighbor to check on... He stopped, looking embarrassed. Never mind. But Celeste understood. You need to check on Hannah, she said gently. Your daughter. Ryan, I know you said we wouldn't talk about complicated family stuff tonight, but eventually we're going to have to address the fact that you have a 7-year-old at home. Ryan's face did something complicated. I was going to tell you, he said. At dinner I was going to mention her, but then everything got so intense and... Celeste, Hannah is my whole world. She's everything to me, and any relationship I have, she comes first. That's non-negotiable. I wouldn't expect anything less, Celeste said honestly. And Ryan, I'm a pediatric surgeon. I love kids. I want to meet her when the time is right, when you're ready, when she's ready. But I understand that's a big step and we don't have to rush it. The relief on Ryan's face was palpable. Thank you, he said, for understanding, for not pressuring. Hannah's mother, he stopped, shook his head. That's a story for another time, but yeah, she's with my uncle's nurse tonight, safe and happy, so I can take you for that ride. Celeste climbed onto the back of the Harley, her dress hiked up to allow her legs to straddle the seat. Ryan handed her a helmet. Not the cheap one she'd worn as a teenager, but a good quality one that fit perfectly. Safety first, he said with a grin. Can't have the brilliant Dr. Davenport getting hurt on my watch. Such a gentleman, Celeste teased, but she was touched by the concern. Ryan climbed on in front of her, and Celeste wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing herself against his back. The engine roared to life, and she felt the familiar vibration of the powerful machine beneath them. They rode through the empty streets of their small coastal town, past darkened storefronts and quiet neighborhoods. Ryan took the long way, winding along the coast road where the ocean stretched dark and infinite to their left. The moon was nearly full, painting everything in silver light. Celeste closed her eyes and just felt the wind, the speed, the solid warmth of Ryan in front of her, the rumble of the engine, the salt smell of the sea. This was freedom. This was being alive. This was what she'd been missing for 10 years. Eventually, Ryan pulled into a familiar spot, the old lighthouse parking lot where they'd had so many of their teenage adventures. He killed the engine, and they sat for a moment in the sudden silence, neither moving. "This okay?" Ryan asked quietly. "Coming here?" "More than okay," Celeste said. She climbed off the bike and removed her helmet, running her fingers through her wind-tangled hair. "Perfect, actually." They walked to the edge of the parking lot, where a low wall overlooked the beach below. The lighthouse beams swept across the water in regular intervals, a steady pulse of light in the darkness. "I miss this," Ryan said. "Miss the ocean. Miss this town. When I was in North Carolina, I kept telling myself I'd left this all behind, that I'd moved on. But the truth was, I was homesick every single day." "For the town?" Celeste asked. "Or for me?" Ryan smiled in the darkness. "Both," he admitted. "The town felt empty without you in it, like something vital was missing." "I felt the same way about Baltimore," Celeste confessed. "All those years at Hopkins, I kept telling myself I was building a life, pursuing my dreams. But I was really just running. From the memories, from the pain, from the fact that the person I most wanted to share my successes with wasn't there." "I'm here now," Ryan said, taking her hand. "And if you'll have me, I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" Celeste asked, hating how vulnerable she sounded. "Promise," Ryan said firmly. "Celeste Davenport, I promise you right here, right now, with the ocean as my witness. I'm not running anymore. Whatever challenges we face them together. Whatever people say, we'll weather it together. I'm all in." Celeste turned to face him fully, and in the moonlight she could see the sincerity in his eyes. "I'm all in too," she said, "no matter what comes." They kissed again, slower this time, sweeter. Not the desperate need of earlier, but something deeper. A promise, a commitment, a choice to try despite the odds. When they finally pulled apart, Ryan checked his watch. "I should probably get you back," he said reluctantly. "And I need to get home to Hannah. Mrs. Patterson is great, but she's 75 and Hannah wears her out." "Tomorrow," Celeste said as they walked back to the Harley. "We'll visit your uncle and see what else he knows. And Ryan, thank you. For tonight. For being honest. For giving us a chance." "Thank you," Ryan countered. "For not giving up on me. On us. For being brave enough to ask me to dinner." The ride back to the hotel was shorter, taking the direct route through town. When they pulled into the garage, Celeste reluctantly climbed off the bike. She didn't want this night to end, didn't want to let Ryan out of her sight in case he disappeared again. Ryan seemed to sense her hesitation. "Hey," he said softly, pulling her close. "I'll be here tomorrow, I promise. This isn't goodbye, this is good night. There's a difference." "Good night then," Celeste said, standing on her toes to kiss him one more time. "See you at noon?" "Noon," Ryan confirmed. "I'll pick you up right here. We'll take the Harley to the hospice center. Uncle James is going to be shocked as hell, but I think he'll be happy too. He always liked you." Celeste smiled. "I always liked him too. He never treated me like just the rich girl. He treated me like I mattered." "You do matter," Ryan said. "More than you know." They said their final goodnights, and Celeste watched as Ryan rode away, the Harley's taillight disappearing into the night. She touched the bracelet on her wrist, the tiny motorcycle charm catching the garage light, and smiled. 10 years she'd waited. 10 years of wondering and hoping and trying to move on. And now, finally, she had her answer. Ryan Walker loved her, had always loved her, and together they were going to rewrite the story their fathers had started, but with a different ending. An ending where love won, where courage mattered, where second chances were possible. Celeste took the elevator up to her penthouse, her mind already racing ahead to tomorrow, to all the tomorrows after that. There would be challenges, she knew. Complications and judgments and difficult conversations. Ryan's daughter would be a major factor, and Celeste had no illusions about the complexities of dating a single father. Her position as Ryan's boss would need to be addressed. Maybe he'd need to find work elsewhere to avoid conflicts of interest, or maybe they'd figure out a way to navigate it professionally. But for tonight, none of that mattered. For tonight, she had hope. She had possibility. She had the beginning of something that felt like it might finally be the happy ending she'd stopped believing in. In her penthouse, Celeste stood by the window overlooking the ocean, the same view her father must have looked at countless times. She wondered if he'd thought of Jamie Walker, of Margaret's song, of the friendship he'd destroyed. She wondered if he'd ever found peace with his choices. "I forgive you, Dad," she said quietly to the empty room. "I don't agree with what you did, and I'm still angry about it. But I understand why you did it. You were trying to protect me from your mistakes. You just didn't realize that some lessons can only be learned by living them, not by hiding from them." Her phone buzzed with a text. "Ryan, home safe. Hannah's asleep. Mrs. Patterson says she was an angel all evening, which probably means she was a terror, and Mrs. P is just being nice. Can't stop thinking about tonight. About you. Sleep well, Celeste." Celeste smiled and typed back, "Sleep well, Ryan. Dream of motorcycles and second chances and brave new beginnings." His response was immediate. "Already am." Celeste set her phone down and got ready for bed, but sleep was a long time coming. Her mind kept returning to room 447, to her father's letter, to the revelation that her love story with Ryan was tangled up in the complicated history of their fathers. But maybe that was okay. Maybe that's what made it meaningful. They weren't just two people falling in love. They were two people choosing to break a cycle, to refuse the easier path of bitterness and separation, to try for something better. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Celeste's last thought was of the photograph on Ryan's Harley. Their fathers, young and hopeful, arms around each other's shoulders, standing in front of the hotel where their dreams would flourish and their friendship would shatter. History didn't have to repeat itself. They could write a new story, one where love triumphed, where second chances mattered, where the blue Harley-Davidson symbolized not loss and betrayal, but hope and homecoming. And tomorrow, they'd take the first real step together toward that new story. Together. The hospice center smelled like antiseptic and lavender, a combination that Celeste recognized from her medical training as an attempt to make death more palatable. Ryan held her hand as they walked down the corridor toward his uncle's room, his grip tight enough to betray his nervousness. He might not be lucid, Ryan warned as they approached room 312. The cancer spread to his brain. Some days he thinks I'm my father. Other days he doesn't recognize me at all. We'll work with whatever we get, Celeste assured him, squeezing his hand. Uncle James was awake when they entered, propped up in bed with oxygen tubes in his nose. He'd been a big man once. Celeste remembered him from that summer 10 years ago, broad-shouldered and barrel-chested. Now he looked shrunken, his skin paper-thin and gray, but his eyes were sharp when they landed on Celeste. "Well, well," he rasped. "The prodigal daughter returns, about damn time, Ryan." Ryan pulled up 2 chairs, settling Celeste before taking his own seat. "Uncle James, we need to ask you about something. About my father and Richard Davenport." James's eyes flickered with something, surprise, maybe, or recognition. "Wondered when you'd get around to that," he said. "Took you long enough." "You knew?" Ryan asked. "You knew we'd figure it out." "Hoped you would," James corrected. "Been carrying these secrets too long. Man shouldn't die with lies on his conscience." He looked at Celeste. "Your daddy was a complicated man, girl. Good and bad all mixed up together. Like most of us." Celeste pulled out the photograph they'd found on the Harley. "We found this last night. You, my father, and Ryan's father. The letter in room 447 explained some of it. About Margaret's song, about the betrayal. But there's more, isn't there? Something we're still missing." James took the photograph with trembling hands, and his eyes went distant. "Margaret," he whispered. "Beautiful Margaret. We all loved her, you know. All 3 of us. But Jamie, your father Ryan, he loved her best. Purely. The way people should love." "What happened to her?" Celeste asked gently. "After Jamie left?" James's eyes filled with tears. "She was pregnant," he said. "Didn't know it when Jamie ran off. By the time she realized he was gone. Couldn't find him. Your father," he looked at Celeste. "Richard offered to help. Said he'd support her, help raise the baby, make it right. But Margaret had pride. She left town, said she'd manage on her own. Ryan had gone very still. The baby," he said slowly. "What happened to the baby?" James looked at him, and Celeste saw the truth in the old man's eyes before he spoke. "You happened, boy. You're Jamie and Margaret's son, the child that came from that love story." The room seemed to tilt. Ryan's hand in Celeste's went slack, and she grabbed it tighter, anchoring him. "That's impossible," Ryan said. "My mother. I thought she died when I was a baby. You said—" "I lied," James said simply. "Margaret did die, but not when you were a baby. She died when you were 7. Cancer." Same as what's taking me now. Before she died, she made me promise to tell you the truth when you were old enough. But then you fell in love with Richard Davenport's daughter and everything got complicated. You knew? Ryan's voice was barely audible. You knew about us back then? Of course I knew, James said. Raised you since you were 7 years old. Think I don't notice when you're sneaking out at midnight to meet some girl? And when I saw who the girl was, he shook his head. History repeating itself. Jamie's son falling for Richard's daughter. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Celeste's mind was racing. My father knew, she said. He knew Ryan was Jamie's son. That's why he paid him to leave. He wasn't just protecting me from his mistakes, he was trying to fix the original sin. He took away Ryan's father, so he tried to give Ryan a future. Twisted logic, James agreed. But yeah, that was Richard's thinking. He came to me after Ryan left, confessed everything. Said he'd given the boy money to start over to get the education Jamie never got. Said maybe if he couldn't fix what he'd done to Jamie, he could at least help Jamie's son. Did my father know? Ryan asked. Jamie, did he know about me before he left? James shook his head. Margaret tried to find him, sent letters to every address we had. But Jamie was running hard, trying to outrun his heartbreak. By the time one of the letters caught up to him, you were already 3 years old. He sent money when he could, but he never came back. Said he couldn't face Richard, couldn't face what he'd lost. Where is he now? Ryan's voice cracked. Is he still alive? James reached for a folder on his bedside table. He died 2 years ago, he said gently. Heart attack in Colorado. I didn't tell you because how do you tell a man his father died when he never knew his father was alive? Jamie left you something, though. Asked me to give it to you when the time was right. The folder contained legal documents transferring ownership of the final piece of the blue Harley-Davidson, the piece that had been missing from Richard Davenport's collection. Along with it was a letter in handwriting Celeste didn't recognize. Ryan read it aloud, his voice shaking. Ryan, if you're reading this, Jimmy finally told you the truth. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to tell you myself. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to come back and be your father. I've thought about you every day of your life, wondered what you looked like, what kind of man you'd become. I've followed your life from a distance. Jimmy sent me photos, updates. I know about the associate's degree, about the factory work. I'm proud of you, son. The Harley was mine and Richard's and Jimmy's. We bought it together when we were young and stupid and thought friendship would last forever. When I left, I took my piece of it, the engine assembly. Couldn't bring myself to give Richard the satisfaction of keeping it whole. But engines need the rest of the bike to run, and bikes need engines to move. We were all broken pieces, refusing to be whole. I'm leaving you my piece. Do with it what you will. Maybe you'll finish what we started. Maybe you'll throw it in the ocean and move on with your life. Either way, know that you're loved. Know that your mother was the best person I ever knew, and losing her was my own damn fault. Be braver than I was. Love harder than I did. And if you ever meet Richard Davenport's daughter, well, maybe some stories deserve a better ending than their fathers managed. Jamie Walker. Silence filled the room, broken only by the beep of James's monitors and the distant sound of nurses in the hallway. Celeste felt tears streaming down her face, and when she looked at Ryan, his face was wet too. So the Harley, Ryan said eventually. The one in the garage. It's complete now, James confirmed. Richard spent years tracking down Jamie's piece after he died. Cost him a fortune. He was restoring it in that secret room when his heart gave out. Wanted to give it to you as a wedding present if you and Celeste ever. He stopped, looking between them. Well, looks like maybe that's still possible. Celeste and Ryan looked at each other, and something passed between them. An understanding, a commitment, a choice to be better than their fathers had been. Uncle James, Ryan said carefully, there's something I need to know. Margaret's song. My mother. Did she love my father until the end? James smiled, and for a moment he looked younger, lighter. Every single day, he said. She named you Ryan because it was close to Richard, but she told me once it was really because it rhymed with Jamie when you said it fast. She never stopped hoping he'd come back, and when she died, your name was the last word she said. Ryan broke then. Quiet sobs shaking his shoulders. Celeste pulled him close, letting him cry against her shoulder while James watched with sad, knowing eyes. Don't make their mistakes, James said quietly. Don't let pride or fear or what people think keep you apart. Life's too short for that kind of stupid. They stayed for another hour, James telling stories about Jamie and Richard and Margaret, the good times before everything fell apart, about motorcycle rides along the coast and late nights planning the hotel and dreams that seemed invincible. He told Ryan things about his father that no one else could. That he sang off-key, that he loved thunderstorms, that he cried at weddings. When they finally left, James was sleeping peacefully, a small smile on his face. The nurse told them he'd probably only have a few more weeks, maybe days. "Thank you for bringing her," the nurse said to Ryan as they walked out. "He's been waiting to tell someone that story for years. I think he can rest easy now." In the parking lot, Ryan stood by the Harley, running his hands over it with new understanding. "My father's engine," he said quietly. "My mother's love, your father's guilt. All of it right here in this machine. What do you want to do with it?" Celeste asked. Ryan thought for a long moment. "Ride it," he said finally. "Keep it whole. Let it be what it was supposed to be, a symbol of friendship and hope, not betrayal and loss. And maybe," he looked at Celeste with a small smile, "maybe someday teach our kids to ride it too." Celeste's breath caught. "Our kids? Too soon?" Ryan asked, but he was smiling. "Maybe a little," Celeste admitted, "but I like the way you think long term." They rode back to the hotel in comfortable silence, Celeste's arms around Ryan's waist, her head resting against his back. She thought about their fathers, about love lost and chances missed and the price of pride. She thought about Margaret's song, who loved a man her whole life even though he ran away. She thought about second chances and brave choices and the power of forgiveness. At the hotel, Ryan parked the Harley in the garage's place of honor, the spot that had been her father's reserved parking. It felt right somehow, completing a circle that had been broken 40 years ago. "So," Ryan said as they stood looking at the motorcycle, "where do we go from here?" "Forward," Celeste said simply. "Together. We figure out the logistics, your job situation, going public with our relationship, integrating me into Hannah's life. We take it one day at a time and we don't run when things get hard." "No running," Ryan agreed. "I'm done running." Celeste pulled out her phone and opened her calendar. "Dinner with the board next week," she said. "They'll ask questions about staffing changes. I'm going to tell them I'm reassigning you to the restoration department. We're going to turn room 447 into a proper motorcycle workshop and you're going to run it." Ryan stared at her. "Celeste, you can't just create a department because—" "I can and I am," she interrupted. "The hotel's history includes this motorcycle, these stories. We're going to honor that. Plus, you're wasted as a janitor. You have an engineering degree and a gift for restoration. Let's use it." "And us?" Ryan asked. "What do we tell people about us?" "The truth," Celeste said. "That we've known each other for 10 years. That we reconnected. That we're seeing where it goes. Anyone who has a problem with it can take it up with me." Ryan pulled her close and kissed her, deep and sure and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "I love you, Celeste Davenport," Ryan said. "I loved you when you were 15 and I was 18 and it was impossible. I loved you when you were in Baltimore and I was in North Carolina pretending I'd moved on. And I love you now, standing in this garage, planning our future." "I love you too," Celeste said. "Always have, always will." Above them, the hotel rose into the sky, 23 floors of glass and steel and stories. Somewhere in there, ghosts of the past lingered. Richard Davenport and Jamie Walker and Margaret Song, forever frozen in their moment of tragedy. But here, now, in the present, their children were writing a different story. One where love won, where second chances mattered, where a blue Harley-Davidson symbolized not what was lost but what was found. Ryan and Celeste walked hand in hand toward the elevator, leaving the motorcycle gleaming in the dim garage light, complete at last, whole again, ready for whatever roads lay ahead.